Hello, everyone. Welcome back for a little bit more Bible and Archaeology live here on Patreon. Patreon exclusive, happy to have you. We're going to start doing this every month after our regular Friday Free-for-All lives. So if you're sending in questions for Patreon to have included in a live, we are happy to include those in the regular live. We'll bring some in there. If you're like, I want this in a Patreon exclusive, just put that in your question as you send it in. We can keep it here. I'd also say, as you are joining us live, if you're able to join us live here for the Patreon exclusive one, you're free to send in questions in the chat here on YouTube, as with the other lives as well that we'll see as we're going through. So we have a bit of a news story. I mean, it's news, not quite news, archaeological news, however.
News.
Yeah, we're going to talk through some of this because this is one of those things where I'm like, we should talk about this, but I don't want to do a news short on this because we need to discuss it, not report on it, which is always a difficult thing to do in 1 to 3 minutes. So we're going to go through some of this. If you have questions, send them in as we're here.
Right.
But thank you for your support. We're happy to do extra things like this. This is stuff we like to talk about. This is stuff we are talking about anyways. And
this is the stuff that we talk about. It doesn't always come onto the camera, but we talk about it.
Yeah.
So we'll share it with you.
Yeah. I would say too, like if there are news stories like this, maybe this is a helpful thing to address as we're talking about what news we do and do not cover.
Yeah.
Because
that's fair.
We don't, we are not going out and doing the reporting on all these things.
Right.
I'm not, as much as I might love to be, at all of these excavations that we get to report on, from Egypt to Greece to all over the place. So Mary Kate and I are going through every week saying, what stories do we want to talk about that have something that's valuable to share, that come from legitimate excavations, and that are grounded in good archaeological method, good outcomes, good procedures.
Right.
We will talk about things sometimes, I'd say, like the response we did a week or so ago to the new claims about the pyramids of Giza. That's not, I would say, in my mind, I'm not classifying that as I'm reporting the news to you, because I don't go into the details of here's all the things, but as in addressing some of what is happening out there. This one, I think, falls into a similar category of addressing some of what you might see.
Right.
I would not say that this is a one-to-one with that news story. I want to be clear here.
Right.
They're not saying that they have some brand new technology that only they have and have access to and have not published, and somehow that allows them to see 2,000 feet underground, and they're not doing that. What we're talking about right now is some news stories that you will inevitably see today or in the coming weeks about archaeology that's happening at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Right.
And so this dig has been ongoing. There have been digs for a long time here.
They've been doing a lot of restoration there.
There's been a lot of restoration works, and so these excavations have been happening since 2022. And it's headed by researchers from Sapienza University of Rome. And so over the last couple of years, it's a small research team that they have there because the church is open. The church has not closed during this time. No. So it's open to visitors, to pilgrims, to believers, to tourists. You can go in. If you've been in during that time, though, you will have seen that there are areas that are closed sporadically or sections that are blocked off, which looks very similar to when it was doing restoration. These things kind of went hand in hand. And so they're saying a new thing, it's Easter time. And so wouldn't you know it, maybe there's an Easter news story to come out of some of the excavations. Yeah. Shocking here, right? So what they're saying, the headline that you'll see grabbing you on these things is their researchers are saying they found a plant dated to the time of Jesus' death in the spring of 33 CE. Most of the articles go on to say, and this is a quote here, might be the same as the one mentioned in John 19:41, which says, now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. So if you're reading through a long version of this, they're going to talk through a lot of other things that the archaeologists say they have found, like pieces of pottery, like older tombs underneath parts of the floor, like animal bones, like things from pilgrims. Most of the articles are not spent on a claim around a plant here. It is the part, though, that becomes the headline, because it's the part where they say, did we find a part of the garden that John is talking about with the death of Jesus? They are also, one part you will see too is them saying, in some of the tombs that they found, is this the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, who is traditionally associated with the burial of Jesus, and then tradition says that these are Joseph's tombs. They say they're going to date or analyze the marble and the mortar to see if they can find out if this is Joseph of Arimathea's tomb or not. So, Bob, plant or no plant? To be or not to be? That is the question.
People are just watching me as you're talking. They're just, the blood. And it's not I'm getting mad. It's just, this is how it works. Every time we go to Easter, there's going to be some story that is, every once in a while they make an actual discovery. And then they hold it, and then they release it around the time of Easter, because that's how this business, and yes, it's a business, works. Archaeology shouldn't be a business, but
you got to pay somehow.
you gotta.
Excavating is expensive.
It's expensive. Now, the journalism side of it, use that term loosely, that is a business. And I say this as one who has, let us say, edited magazines dedicated to this industry. And I'm one who writes books and who does a YouTube show. Yeah, does a media dedicated to reporting on this. But one of the things that we're dedicated to, and Jordan, this is a really good service that you provide here as part of Bible and Archaeology, is looking at these stories and trying to give you some barometer of, hey, this is legitimate. And, this is legitimate. They're doing some work here.
Yeah.
But I want you to see the difference between the work that they're doing and the headlines that they're giving.
Yes.
Because they are doing some restoration. They're doing some work and they're finding things. But the headline that we're getting is that, hey, and this is possible. This kind of work, they're doing this at Tel Aviv University all the time. They can now look at the pollen that has been preserved. And they can look at the pollen from 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and they can analyze this pollen and they can see what kind of plants were in a garden from a couple thousand years ago. They have the technology to do this now. They can do that. What you cannot do is say, this is a plant from the tomb of Jesus
from the spring
of 33 CE. And it might because this is, basically they're claiming this is the garden tomb. Now, what you need to know as the background is that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the traditional site of the burial of Jesus. That's the accepted traditional site. And if you've been there, you'll see the Edicule, you see the Greek Orthodox coming on one side and the Coptic on the other side. The Armenians are in the hole in the wall in the back. The Ethiopic church is on the... There's lots of different people worshiping in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But there is a rival site called the Garden Tomb that is outside of the present city walls of Old City Jerusalem. And one of the rationales, there's a guy woke up and saw a vision and he looked like a skull and he thought this was Golgotha. But one of the arguments for that site was it's outside of the city walls. Not realizing that the site of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre today would have been outside of the city walls at the time of Jesus, because the city expands. And so it was outside of the city walls of the time of Jesus, therefore was a candidate site for the burial of Jesus. So there is an old rivalry between the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and other sites, but especially this Garden Tomb.
And the Garden Tomb, they try to walk a line where they want to advertise themselves as being a potential site, but don't go so far. Like if you're looking at the printed materials that they have, they don't make that claim. They let you make it for them though.
Yeah.
They'll let lots of places make it for them and not correct them. And so they're, trying to walk this line of letting you think they might be, but acknowledging that the archaeology of the tomb doesn't match the things that might be what it needs to be for this time period and who found it and when. And they're an interesting place.
To be fair to the folks at the Garden Tomb, when you press them on it, when you ask them about it, they will say, this is a nice place to meditate. Yeah. It's a nice place to be here. Look, we have a tomb. Look, and And we can't say for 100% that this was the place. But we'd like to think that it's a nice candidate, and it certainly is possible that it could be the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They will be honest about that, and credit to them for saying that, for not just putting their foot down and saying, no, it was this one, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre saying, no, it was here.
Yeah. And
so to their credit. And it is a beautiful place to go visit.
It's a nice, calm place.
Yeah. It's gorgeous.
And I'd say, like, if you're looking at any of these articles,
right,
as you're reading through, right, you have your headline. I mean, I pulled some of them back up here so we can look at just the headlines of some of the current 3. Echoing Gospel Account, Traces of Ancient Garden Found Under Church of Holy Sepulchre. Or, New Archaeological Evidence Could Confirm the Church of the Holy Sepulchre as Jesus' Crucifixion. Something. They have their end of the articles messed up there. Jesus' burial spot yields new biblical clues about his death, scientist says. So you have varying levels of what's going on. In the same way, then, if you read those articles, depending on the length of them, at the bottom, inevitably it's at the bottom below the fold where they know you're not going to read, even if it's digital, right? It's below 5 mid ads or whatever it is. The lead archaeologist has a quote. "The real treasure we are revealing is the history of the people who made this site what it is by expressing their faith here, whether someone believes or not in the historicity of the Holy Sepulchre. The fact that generations of people did is objective. The history of this place is the history of Jerusalem, and at least from a certain moment, it is the history of the worship of Jesus Christ." So, you bury the lead here a little bit, but they take the similar tack, which is, even if we say we have found some tombs or some plants and things, well, the real treasure is the history of this. This is the traditional place that gets associated with this. What is the thing that you could find that would prove that? Well, they're going to say, that's not, when pressed, that's not what we have.
Right. What we do have is, from the 4th century on, evidence that people believed this is the site, and people have been coming here for, 1,600 years or whatever, and maybe before that, but we have this building and this has been the traditional site. Now, I want to set aside any claim or any judgment about the science they did about whether or not they've got a plant that they can identify to 33 CE.
Well, and even like if you accept that they did, there is still the problem of, is this the only place with plants?
We got it. Well,
or the only place with olive trees, or the only place
So first of all, there's going to have to be some peer review and some evaluation of, can they prove that, right? That's the same thing that every time somebody else does some work on when looking at the pollen, looking at plant, if they make a claim that this is what we found here and it dates to the late Bronze Age or the early Iron and we've identified it as this, okay, somebody else has to come in and check that, right? And that's just good archaeology.
And they have been publishing reports as things come out. So this is not like an announcement that comes out of the blue with nothing that's been announced from them since 2022. This is just the mid-Easter run here.
I'm setting aside any judgment on that claim. That's not what we're looking at here. What we're looking at is, let's grant that they found evidence of a plant that dates to 30. Let's grant that. You found evidence of a plant that dates to 33 CE. Granted, you win. You got it. We have some other problems here. Number one, does that mean that it's the plant that was in the garden of the tomb of Jesus?
That John tells us about.
That John happens to tell us about. I'll start with the obvious. Now, I've made multiple videos on this, but they have to do with a different topic, and that is the use of AD and BC versus BCE and CE. Herod the Great, according to external biblical evidence, not just the internal biblical chronology, but all of the evidence that we have, archaeologically, historically, Herod the Great died in 4 BC. You can call it BC or BC, whatever you want. Herod the Great died in 4 BC. And if Jesus was born during the reign of Herod the Great, then he would have been born at least 4 BC. You with me? So if Jesus was born during the reign of Herod the Great, and we know for a fact that Herod died 4 BC. Now, he also said, kill everybody under 2 years old. And so we know that Jesus was born prior to 4 BC. So was it 5 BC? But let's just say Jesus was born right before Herod the Great died. It's going to be at least 4 BC. So if you count forward from there, it would be 3 BC, 2 BC, 1 BC. Then what do you do with the year 0? But then 1, 2, 3. And Jesus starts his ministry at around 30 years old. That means he doesn't start at 30 AD. Let's just use BC AD. He wouldn't start his ministry at 30 AD. It would be 4 years prior to this. So this is what, 26? And then if Jesus has a 1-year ministry like he does in the Synoptics, or if he has a 3-year ministry like he does in John, you're still not to 30 AD. You're still at 29. So in no way are you at 33 CE.
And maybe, I wouldn't be shocked if when this gets published, inevitably, when you're dating anything, it is not in the academic reporting of this in this year. There is always a window.
Yeah.
And so that window, just because of the way the science runs,
right,
expands that. So when looking at the plant remains, using the pollen, using
right,
the seed types, when is it burned, whether it's the radiocarbon, or there's lots of ways, they all give gaps. They give a window where this plant might have come from or happened, and that is the way archaeology works.
I wouldn't be surprised if by the time this story progresses, that this evidence is going to be somewhere between the late 20s and early 30s.
Yes.
AD.
Yeah.
Because, and again, it's the tradition.
I'm surprised it doesn't already.
I know. I was raised in a church tradition where on the foundation stone of the building, it said, the Church of Christ founded 33 AD, because that's the tradition, 33, right? 3-year ministry, around 30 is 33 AD is when he died. But we know that Herod the Great died 4 BC, and that would have been a little earlier. So that's one of the issues. The other thing is, it's like it's a Jesus boat, they call it up in Lake Gennesaret, right?
Yeah.
You find a boat on the Sea of Galilee that can hold around 12 people.
It must be.
That does not necessarily mean that was the boat that Jesus sat in with his 12 disciples. It might have been. It could have been. It's in a location. It's a boat. It's made of all kinds of different woods, which suggests that it wasn't necessarily a wealthy boat. I always point out that the signs in English up there say the Jesus boat, but in Hebrew the signs say boat from the Great Rebellion against Rome. Right?
Yeah,
sell your tickets to the appropriate audiences, right? But so this is the problem with this. Even if we set aside the fact that the science is good on the founding of the discovery of the identification of this plant, to say that it's from 33 CE and therefore it's from the tomb, which we still aren't sure because it's
from a garden, and so that means that
it's Constantine's mom that comes in and says, "Where was he born?" Oh, this is,
and they say place over here,
so tear down this temple and build up another one.
Yeah,
that's the tradition. That's where the tradition comes from. If you ever read Mark Twain's Innocents Abroad, he tells a great story of the how they discovered the true cross, and how the way that these traditions come about demonstrates that we don't know about it, like they said, until the 4th century.
Like they say at the end, that this is the real treasure, is that they're talking about, and whether someone believes or not, that generations of people have believed this to be the site. So we want to just take a little bit of extra time here to address this, because this story came out here in the last couple of days, and it's starting to get picked up by more places. And the closer we get to Easter, you will see it more and more places. And inevitably, the version of it will probably change, whether it's because the archaeologists are giving more information or more quotes, or the writers are looking at some of potential problems, or how do they want to repitch it. We wanted to take a moment to say, we saw it, and here's some of the difficulties with it. And all of this is to say, as we have been going through, this is not to say that they could have found things. They can do testing for these things. But as you read these types of stories, these are the kinds of questions you should have in mind about how is it being reported to you? What types of questions is the article not asking that it should be, or is it skipping over? Because as with like a lot of these things, there can be very good information and history behind this site that is being found about the history of this building, which has been built and destroyed over and over again. It has been visited by millions of people. Plant to 33 in the springtime, maybe some difficulties. But also, like, just look at the body of the articles. That's not what the body of the articles focus on.
Correct.
So, it's the headline. They get you in for a reason. They're using that language, and then they go somewhere else.
This is clickbait. By the way, it's done deliberately. It's not done because they think the reader is stupid. It's done because they want people to come in and read. This is what they say to themselves. They want the reader to come in and read the article, and this is how to get them in the door.
Yeah.
And then the article will come in and say, yeah, we're
Another
not
direction.
sure.
Yeah.
But this is the definition of clickbait.
So that's the long and short of the response to the current state of reporting on this. If there are significant updates that require new commentary, we will let you know. We'll come back. We'll put something out here on YouTube if there's more to say with this. But thank you for joining us on Patreon. Thank you for your support. If you have questions for follow-ups to this, leave them in the comments here. You can leave the comments on Patreon. You can leave the comments on the YouTube video, either way that you want to go. We'll look at either of those before. We'll do another one of these next month after our live, whether it's news related or otherwise. We'll find out when we get closer to that. But for today, that's our Patreon Encore for April. Bob, always a pleasure.
Lots of fun.
Lots of fun. We look forward to seeing your questions, your comments soon. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you next time.